The moon base was quiet that Tuesday morning when everything changed. Communications Officer Minho was drinking his third cup of coffee, monitoring the usual space chatter from merchant ships and research vessels. The equipment around him hummed softly in the sterile white rooms carved deep into Luna's surface. Most people back on Earth didn't even know this place existed. Then the emergency frequency lit up like a Christmas tree. Minho nearly dropped his coffee as alarms started blaring. The transmission was unlike anything he'd ever heard. It wasn't the usual distress beacon from a broken-down cargo hauler or lost explorer. This was something else entirely. Ooh! The signal was powerful, desperate, and coming from way beyond human. Space? What the hell? Minho muttered, his fingers flying over the controls. The message was encoded in 17 different languages, some he recognized from the Galactic database, others completely alien. Yes. As the translation software worked, his face went pale. The message was from creatures called the Vexani. They described themselves as peaceful traders who had never harmed anyone. Their homeworld was dying. Something called the Void Swarm had found them, and it was eating everything. It's not just killing, but literally consuming entire planets and turning the people into more monsters. Minho's hands shook as he read the translated text. 17 worlds were already gone. Billions of innocent beings, dead or worse. The Vexani were broadcasting to anyone who would listen, begging for help from civilizations they'd never even met. What made it worse was that they had no idea who they were talking to. The message mentioned Earth as a primitive backwater system that probably couldn't even receive their transmission properly. They thought humans were barely out of caves, maybe flying around in simple chemical rockets if they were lucky. They had no clue what humanity had been building in secret. Station Commander Jisoo rushed into the communications room when Minho called her. She was a tough woman who'd seen plenty of action during the Mars Rebellion, but even she looked shaken as she read the message. "How far away are they?" she asked. 400 light years, ma'am. Signal took that long to reach." Jisoo's jaw tightened.
"So this is already old news."
"They might be dead by now." "The transmission is still active," Minho said. "It's automated, but there are live updates. They're still fighting, but barely holding on. Maybe hours left, maybe days." For a moment, the room was silent, except for the humming of machines. Jisoo stared at the translated message, thinking about all the secret projects humanity had been working on. The hidden shipyards in the asteroid belt, the weapons that could crack moons, the fleet that officially didn't exist. "Send this to Earth immediately," she ordered. "Full priority. Wake up everyone who needs to see this." "Ma'am, if we respond to this, the whole galaxy will know what we can really do." Jisoo looked at him grimly. Maybe it's time they found out. The emergency call came at 3 a.m. Geneva time. Admiral Hyen didn't care. Within 2 hours, every important military leader on Earth was either physically present or connected via secure quantum link to the underground war room beneath the Swiss mountains. The room itself was impressive, carved from solid rock with walls covered in holographic displays showing everything from troop movements to asteroid mining operations. But today, all eyes were on the main screen displaying the Vexani distress call. "Ladies and gentlemen," Admiral Hyen began, her voice cutting through the nervous chatter. "We have a situation that changes everything." General Yuna, head of Earth's ground forces, leaned forward in her chair. She was known for asking the hard questions. "Admiral, we've spent 50 years hiding our real strength. Why throw that away? Now for aliens we've never met." Fleet Captain Seok, commander of the Secret Space Navy, nodded in agreement. "Yuna's right. Once we show our hand, there's no going back. Every hostile civilization in the galaxy will know humans aren't the primitive species they think we are." Intelligence Director Jinwoo stood up, activating a new set of displays. What appeared on screen made several council members gasp. The images showed worlds that had once been green and beautiful, now stripped down to bare rock. Cities that had housed millions were gone, replaced by massive organic structures that pulsed like beating hearts. "This is what we're dealing with," Jinwoo said grimly. "The Void Swarm isn't just another aggressive species. It's a biomechanical nightmare that literally eats everything. It's plants, animals, people, even the minerals in the ground." Then it uses that material to build more of itself. Defense Minister Chaewon shook her head. But why should that be our problem? We're safe here in Sol System. Are we? Jinwoo brought up a star map. Look at the pattern. The swarm isn't random. It's moving in a spiral, consuming everything in its path. At their current rate, they'll reach human space in maybe 20 years. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. Admiral Hyen stood up. There's something else. Our analysis shows the swarm learns from each battle. Every world it conquers makes it smarter and stronger. If we wait until it reaches us, we'll be facing something that's absorbed the knowledge and resources of hundreds of civilizations. So what are you proposing? Asked General Yuna. We help the Vexani. We show the galaxy that humanity isn't going to sit back and watch innocent people die. And we stop this thing before it gets any stronger. Fleet Captain Seok rubbed his temples. The sword protocol has been theoretical for decades. We've never actually used those ships in real combat. Then it's time to find out if our theories work, Admiral Hyen replied. The debate that followed was intense, but short. Every person in that room had seen the images of consumed worlds. They knew what was coming when the vote was called. It was unanimous. Very well, Admiral Hyen said, entering her authorization codes. Activate the sword protocol. It's time to show the galaxy what Deathworlders can do. Red lights began flashing as humanity's greatest secret came to life. The asteroid belt had always looked empty to casual observers, just floating rocks drifting through space, with the occasional mining ship collecting metals and ice. But Captain Minji knew better. She stood in the command center of Shipyard Alpha, watching through reinforced windows as humanity's greatest secret came to life. All stations, this is Control, she announced over the COM system. Operation Sword Dance is now active. Begin transformation sequence. What happened next would have shocked anyone watching from outside. Across the belt, what looked like ordinary mining vessels suddenly started changing. False hull plates fell away like shed skin, revealing sleek war machines underneath. Weapons pods unfolded from hidden compartments. Armor plating slid into position with mechanical precision. Lieutenant Commander Tai-Ho stood at the coordination station, his screen showing hundreds of ships across dozens of asteroid facilities. Mining Platform 7 reports full combat configuration achieved, he called out. Platform 12 is... Wow, look at that thing. Through the viewports, they could see a massive vessel that had been disguised as a simple or processor. Now it revealed itself as a carrier, launch bays opening like hungry mouths. Fighter craft began streaming out, their pilots running final checks on systems that had never been used in actual combat. How long did it take to build all this? Asked a young ensign who was seeing the transformation for the first time. 30 years, Captain Minji replied. Ever since first contact, we knew this day might come. Every mining operation, every research station, every commercial venture out here had a second purpose. The centerpiece of the fleet was emerging. From the largest asteroid facility, EU's Indomitable was a monster of a ship, bigger than anything humanity had ever built. Captain Widgeon's voice crackled over the COM as his crew brought the flagship online. Control, this is Indomitable. All primary systems green, weapons online, ready to show the galaxy what humans can do. Engineering Chief Su Yang was practically running between stations, checking reactor outputs and weapon systems that had only existed in simulations until now. Power levels are stable across all ships, she reported. These new fusion cores are performing better than expected. It wasn't just about the ships. In the Marine bays, Colonel Dong-Yoon was addressing his troops. These weren't regular soldiers. They were volunteers who had trained for years for a mission they thought might never come. Men and women who had prepared to fight enemies they'd never seen on worlds they'd never imagined. Listen up, Dong-Yoon told his Marines. We're about to become the first humans to fight a real war in space. Not against other humans, but against something that wants to eat everything we've ever cared about. Some of you are scared. Good. Fear keeps you alive, but remember why we're doing this. One of his sergeants raised her hand. Sir, what if we're not strong enough? Dong-Yoon smiled grimly. Then we make ourselves strong enough. That's what humans do. Across the fleet, similar conversations were happening. Pilots checking their fighters, gunners testing weapon systems, engineers making sure every bolt was tight and every circuit was perfect. Fleet status report, Captain Minji called out. All vessels report ready for departure. Lieutenant Commander Tai Ho announced. 247 combat ships, fully armed and crewed. Captain Minji nodded. For 50 years, humanity had pretended to be weak and primitive. Today, that pretense ended. Navigation Officer Yeji had never plotted a course this far from home. Her hands moved across the holographic controls as she calculated the jump to Vexani space. 400 light-years was a distance that should have taken decades to cross, even with the best human technology anyone knew about. But the Alcubierre drives humming beneath. The fleet were humanity's most carefully guarded secret. All ships. Prepare for translation, Admiral Hyene announced from the bridge of the Indomitable. This is what we've trained for. The jump itself was incredible. Space seemed to fold around the human fleet like origami, stars stretching into lines of light. What should have been an impossible journey took only 3 days. When they dropped back into normal space, they were in an alien solar system, further from Earth than any human had ever traveled. Translation complete, Yeji reported. All ships accounted for. We're in the Vexani system. But what they found there was a nightmare. Tactical Officer Junho's face went pale as his sensors painted the picture. Admiral, you need to see this. The main display lit up with readings from the Vexani homeworld. What had once been a beautiful planet covered in crystal cities was now under siege. Its massive organic ships, each one the size of a city block, swarmed around the world like angry wasps. They weren't ships in any human sense. They looked alive, pulsing with veins of light and covered in what looked like skin. My God, whispered someone on the bridge. The planet's orbital defenses were gone. Shattered remains of space stations drifted like metal confetti. On the surface, Junho's enhanced sensors showed the real horror. The elegant spire cities that the Vexani had built over centuries were being systematically torn apart. Bioships were literally eating them, breaking down everything into raw materials. How many enemy contacts? Admiral Hyene asked, her voice steady, despite what they were seeing. Sensors count at least 3 million bioships in various sizes, Junho reported. The smallest are about destroyer class. The largest ... double quotes, he paused, checking his readings. Admiral, some of these things are bigger than our battleships. Communications. Officer Dayun was monitoring the planet's emergency frequencies. I'm picking up scattered transmissions from the surface. Vexani survivors are hiding in underground shelters, but the bioships are drilling down to reach them. They're running out of time. Admiral Hyene studied the tactical display. The human fleet had 247 ships. They were facing millions of alien bioweapons that had already conquered 17 worlds. The math wasn't encouraging. What long do the Vexani have? She asked. JUNHO ran calculations based on the bioship's harvesting rate. At their current pace, maybe 6 hours before they break through to the deepest shelters. After that, didn't need to finish. The bridge was silent for a moment. Everyone understood what they were facing. This wasn't a fair fight. This was humanity's first real test against an enemy that had never been defeated. All ships. This is Admiral Hyene, she announced on the fleet frequency. We came here to save lives. It's exactly what we're going to do. Prepare for immediate engagement. Show these things what happens when they threaten innocent people in front of humans. Warning lights began flashing throughout the fleet as humanity prepared for its first real war among the stars. The human fleet materialized between the void. Swarm and Vexani prime like ghosts becoming solid. One moment there was empty space. The next moment, 247 warships hung in the void, their hulls gleaming under the alien sun. Communications specialist Dahyun's fingers flew over her controls as she opened channels on every frequency the Galactic database had on file. This is the Terran Defense Fleet to all parties in this system. We are responding to the Vexani distress call. Any hostile forces threatening civilian populations will face immediate retaliation. Deep underground on Vexani Prime, crystalline beings huddled in their shelters looked up in amazement as their sensors detected the newcomers. They had called for help, never expecting anyone to answer, and certainly not expecting ships with energy signatures their computers couldn't even classify. Science. Officer Sunho was having the same problem from the other direction. Admiral, these bioships don't make sense. They're not machines, but they're not entirely biological either. It's like someone took living tissue and merged it with technology I don't recognize. Through the viewports, the crew could see the enemy up close for the first time. The bioships looked like massive sea creatures crossed with nightmare machines. Tentacles writhed alongside weapon pods. What looked like eyes the size of buildings tracked the human vessels. Some had mouths that could swallow a destroyer whole. They're beautiful in a terrifying way, someone whispered. The Void Swarm's reaction was immediate and violent. Roughly half their forces, about 1.5 million bioships, began turning away from the planet to face this new threat. They moved like a school of fish, flowing through space with disturbing grace. Weapons Officer Kung Su watched his tactical display light up with targets. Admiral, we're about to be seriously outnumbered. Each of our ships is going to face roughly 6,000 enemies. Then we'd better make our shots count, Admiral Hyan replied calmly. On Vexani Prime, the crystalline survivors were monitoring the situation with growing amazement. Elder Prism, speaking from the deepest shelter, transmitted to his people, the humans. Their weapons are unlike anything in our databases. At these energy readings, the Vexani had access to galactic military records going back thousands of years. They knew every type of weapon used by every known civilization. But the signatures coming from the human ships were completely new. Plasma. Cannons that burned hotter than star cores. Kinetic weapons that fired projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. And something their sensors labeled as exotic matter manipulators that defied known physics. The first wave of bioships reached weapons range, and Kung Su's board lit up like a Christmas tree. All ships, this is Weapons Command. You're cleared. To engage. Let's show them what happens when they mess with innocent people. The space between the fleets erupted in light as humanity fired its first shots in an interstellar war. Plasma beams lanced out like spears of miniature suns. Kinetic rounds moved so fast they were barely visible, striking bioships with the force of tactical nukes. The bioships returned fire with weapons that sprayed acid and launched living projectiles that writhed through space. But something strange happened. Instead of the easy victory they expected, the Void Swarm found themselves facing an enemy that fought unlike anything they'd encountered. They're learning our patterns, Sunho reported. But we're learning theirs too, and we're learning faster. Battle for Vexani Prime had begun. Fighter Squadron Leader Neon gripped her controls as she led 60 human fighters into the swirling mass of bioships. Her voice crackled over the cum as energy blasts lit up space around them. Blue Squadron, stay tight but unpredictable. These things learn fast, so don't give them patterns to follow. The difference between human and galactic warfare became clear within minutes. Every other civilization the Void Swarm had faced fought in neat formations, following ancient military traditions. Ships lined up, exchanged fire, and the stronger force won. It was predictable, honorable, and utterly useless against an enemy that adapted to everything. Humans fought dirty. Flight, Commander Taeyong demonstrated. This perfectly as he led his wing through what looked like a suicidal charge at a massive bioship. At the last second, his fighters scattered in 12 different directions, each one targeting a different weak point they'd identified through rapid analysis. The bioship, expecting a head-on assault, couldn't adapt fast enough to the sudden, multi-vector attack. That's how you confuse something that thinks it's smart. Taeyong laughed as the enemy vessel broke apart. Back on the command ship, weapons specialist Chaiyung was orchestrating a symphony of destruction that changed every few minutes. First, the human fleet used concentrated firepower to punch through bioship armor. When the enemy adapted by thickening their defenses, She switched to rapid-fire harassment that confused their targeting systems. When they adjusted to that, she had the fleet split into smaller groups that attacked from impossible angles. Key is never doing the same thing twice, she explained to her junior officers. Every galactic civilization has their signature fighting style. The swarm learns those styles and counters them. But humans? We don't have a signature style. We adapt faster than they do. The bioships were getting frustrated. Their collective intelligence had conquered 17 worlds by learning each civilization's combat patterns and overwhelming them. But these humans kept changing their tactics faster than the swarm could process. Then something happened that shocked every Vexani. Observer and probably saved their species. Destroyer Captain Minuk's ship, the UES Relentless, had taken heavy damage. Acid weapons had eaten through his hull and his engines were failing. His crew was down to emergency power, and evacuation shuttles from Vexani Prime were trying to reach safety behind his position. "Captain, we need to retreat," his first officer urged. "The ship won't take much more punishment." Minuk looked at his tactical display. A cluster of massive bioships was moving to intercept the evacuation shuttles. Thousands of Vexani civilians would die if those shuttles were caught. His damaged destroyer couldn't outrun the enemy, but it could do something else. "All hands. Abandon ship," he ordered calmly. "Emergency evacuation. 60 seconds, sir. What are you doing?" "Something these bioships won't expect." Minuk stayed at his controls as his crew escaped in pods. He aimed his crippled destroyer directly at the center of the bioship formation and pushed his damaged engines to maximum. The Relentless accelerated like a missile, its hull glowing from the strain. The bioships realized too late what was happening. The destroyer slammed into their formation at tremendous speed, its fusion reactor going critical on impact. The explosion took out 17 enemy vessels and created a gap wide, enough for the evacuation shuttles to escape. Across the battlefield, every human ship fell silent for a moment in honor of Captain Minuk and his sacrifice. Then they fought. Even harder, while the fleet battle raged overhead. Colonel Dongyun's Marines were preparing for something no human had ever done before. Fighting aliens on an alien world. The drop pods screamed through Vexani Prime's atmosphere like meteors, their heat shields glowing white-hot as they plunged toward the crystalline surface. 30 seconds to touchdown, Sergeant Hannah announced over the com. Remember the gravity? "Here is lighter than Earth, but the atmosphere will try to crystallize your equipment. Keep your seals tight." The Marines wore specialized exoskeletons designed specifically for this mission. The suits were bulky but powerful. Built-in air recycling and armor thick enough to stop the bioweapons they'd seen in intelligence reports. Each Marine carried enough firepower to level a city block back on Earth. When the pods hit the surface, the Marines got their first real look at what the Void Swarm did to conquered worlds. It was worse than any briefing had prepared them for. What had once been beautiful crystal cities were now grotesque organic factories. The elegant spires that reached toward the sky had been partially dissolved and rebuilt with pulsing flesh and metal. Tubes connected building to building, pumping unknown substances between structures that looked more like internal organs than architecture. "Jesus," whispered Private Jong Ho as he stepped out of his pod. "What did they do to this place?" "They're processing it," Staff Sergeant Mina replied grimly, checking her scanner readings, breaking down everything for raw materials. The buildings, the ground, probably the people too. The Marines advanced in small teams, using the shattered remains of crystal structures for cover. The bioweapons they encountered were unlike anything in human military experience. Some looked like mechanical spiders the size of cars with acid dripping, mandibles, and way too many legs. Others resembled flying jellyfish that shot electrical bolts from writhing tentacles, but the humans adapted quickly. When Corporal Jehoon's squad encountered a group of the spider creatures, they didn't panic. Instead, they used the creatures' own aggression against them, leading them into a crystal formation that amplified the Marines' plasma weapons. "These things are tough, but they're not smart individually," Jehoon reported. "They rely on numbers and intimidation. Hit them hard and fast, and they fall apart." The real breakthrough came when the Marines reached the first group of Vexani survivors. Deep underground, the crystalline beings had been hiding in ancient caverns, listening to the sounds of their world being consumed above them. When human voices echoed down the tunnels, they couldn't believe it. Elder Prism was the first to emerge, his crystal body reflecting the lights from the Marine's equipment. He was tall and elegant, but clearly terrified. You're the humans. The ones who answered our call? That's right, said Lieutenant Young Ho, removing his helmet to show his human face. We're here to get you out. What happened next amazed the Vexani. As more bioweapons attacked, they watched humans fight with a combination of tactical intelligence and pure determination that they'd never seen before. When conventional weapons weren't enough, the Marines improvised. When their equipment failed, they used whatever was available. Sergeant Hannah's team demonstrated this when they encountered a massive bioweapon blocking the evacuation route. Their plasma rifles barely scratched its armor, so they used the crystalline environment itself. By targeting specific crystal formations, they brought down a section of ceiling that crushed the creature. How do you think of these things so quickly? Elder Prism asked in wonder. We're used to fighting for our lives, Hannah replied simply. It's what humans do. More Vexani emerged from hiding, and the Marines formed protective corridors to guide them to safety. Intelligence Officer Jin Woo was deep in analysis when his computers started screaming warnings. The bioships weren't just retreating randomly. They were forming organized groups, moving toward specific points at the edge of the Vexani system. Admiral, we have a problem, he announced over the com, his voice tight with concern. The swarm isn't just running away, or trying to escape. The system entirely. Admiral Hyan's response was immediate. Explain. I'm detecting massive energy buildups consistent with faster-than-light communication. They're calling for help. If even a few bioships make it out of this system, they'll bring reinforcements from all 17 conquered worlds. The implications. Hit everyone on the bridge like a physical blow. The void swarm they were fighting represented just one invasion force. Somewhere out there, 17 dead worlds were crawling with millions more bioships, each one smarter and more dangerous than when they'd started their conquest. How long until reinforcements arrive? Admiral Hyan asked. Out. Maybe 3 days. And when they come back, we'll be facing everything they've learned from consuming 17 civilizations. But Admiral Hyan smiled grimly. Good thing I planned for this. At the very edge of the system, where space began, too thin toward the void between stars, massive human vessels that had been waiting in stealth mode suddenly powered up. These were the Siege-class ships, monsters even by human standards, commanded by Captain Byamju. Interdiction fields activating now, Byamju reported. Nothing gets in or out of this system without our permission. The bioships hit the invisible barrier like birds flying into glass. Suddenly, their escape routes were cut off. The collective intelligence of the void swarm realized it was trapped. And that's when things got really dangerous. Tactical Coordinator Ryujin watched his displays. As the enemy's behavior changed completely, they've stopped trying to escape. Now they're going all out to destroy us before we can finish them. The final battle was unlike anything in the previous fighting. Bioships that had been retreating suddenly turned around and charged the human fleet with suicidal fury. They weren't trying to win anymore. We're trying to ensure that at least some of their numbers survived to carry information about humanity to the rest of the swarm. Every target must be eliminated, Admiral Hyan announced to the fleet. Even one survivor could doom not just the Vexani, but countless other worlds. Engineering Chief Su Yang found herself pushing human technology beyond its designed limits. Admiral, I'm redlining reactors across the fleet. These power outputs weren't meant to be sustained. How long can we maintain them? Maybe an hour before we start losing ships to reactor failures? Then we finish this in an hour. The human fleet transformed into a precision instrument of destruction, every weapon fired in perfect coordination. Fighter squadrons that had been scattered across the battlefield were formed into coordinated strike forces. Even damaged ships contributed. Using their remaining power to target bioships that might otherwise escape, Ryujin coordinated it all from his tactical station, his hands flying over controls as he directed hundreds of ships in a deadly dance. Bioship cluster at Vector 77, Concentrate fire. Group Delta. You have stragglers trying to hide in the asteroid field. The bioships fought back with everything they had. Some tried to kamikaze into human vessels. Others released clouds of smaller creatures that swarmed like angry hornets. But for every desperate tactic they used, the humans had an answer. Reactor 3 is approaching critical, Su Young warned. Keep it running, Admiral Hyen ordered. We're almost done. The last bioship died in a burst of exotic energy 93 minutes after the interdiction fields activated. The Vexani system was silent, except for human voices and the grateful. Transmissions of crystalline survivors, the void swarms perfect. Record was broken. The silence after the battle was almost deafening. For the first time in days, the Vexani system was quiet except for the hum of human ships and the grateful transmissions from crystalline survivors emerging from there. Underground shelters, Diplomatic Officer Sena sat at her communication station. Knowing that the next few hours would change everything, the secret was out. Humanity had revealed itself to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. And now every civilization within 1,000 light-years would know that the primitive species from Sol System was anything but helpless. We're receiving communication. Requests from 47 different star systems, her assistant reported. Everyone wants to know who we are and what just happened here. Sana carefully crafted her response. The message was simple, but powerful. This is the Terran Defense Fleet. We responded to a distress call from peaceful beings under attack. We will always respond to such calls. Aggression against innocent civilizations will not be tolerated while humanity has the power to prevent it. The response from the galaxy was immediate and overwhelming. Some civilizations expressed gratitude and relief. Others demanded to know why humanity had hidden its true capabilities. A few aggressive species sent thinly veiled threats, angry that their future expansion plans might now face opposition. But it was the Vexani response that mattered most to Admiral Hyen. Elder Prism, speaking for his entire species, transmitted a formal message. The Vexani people pledged eternal friendship to humanity. You came when no one else would. You fought when no one else could. We are forever in your debt, Vexani Ambassador Kristen. Recently emerged from the deepest shelters, has brought Admiral Hyen the most important intelligence of all. Star charts showing the location of the 17 conquered worlds. These systems still have survivors, Kristen explained, his crystalline voice carrying both hope and sorrow. The swarm doesn't consume everything immediately. They keep populations alive to use as ... resources. If you could reach them. Relief Coordinator Hanil was already organizing massive aid shipments to Vexani Prime. Human medical teams worked alongside crystalline engineers to rebuild what the swarm had destroyed. It was the first time in galactic history that a military intervention had been immediately followed by humanitarian aid on such a scale. This is what makes humans different, Elder Prism observed as he watched human engineers helping to repair crystal spires. Other species conquer or ignore. You fight to protect, then stay to help rebuild. Strategic Planner Jingin was facing a much larger challenge. Liberating 17 worlds from Void Swarm occupation would require a military campaign unlike anything humanity had ever attempted. Each world would be different, with unique challenges and unknown numbers of bioships. We'll need to move fast, he explained to Admiral Hyen. The swarm's main collective intelligence is spread across those 17 worlds. If we give them time to prepare, they'll adapt to everything we used here. Admiral Hyen nodded, looking at the star charts. Then we don't give them time. We hit them hard and fast, one system after another, until every last survivor is free. News of humanity's campaign spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Species that had considered themselves helpless against aggressive neighbors suddenly realized they had a potential ally. The galactic balance of power shifted overnight, but, perhaps most importantly, humanity had established a new principle in galactic affairs. No longer would civilizations have to face extinction alone. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, the Terran Defense Fleet was ready to answer the call. The age of human isolation was over. The age of human responsibility had begun.